People say that Lewis Hamilton has it easy, that he can win the championship with one hand tied behind his back. That might be the case, but he can win at Silverstone with 3 wheels on his wagon. Welcome to the Formula One Grid Talk podcast. Today we'll be reviewing today's British Grand Prix. We are powered by the F1 Chronicle. Visit f1chronicle.com for news, reviews and opinions on all things F1. Hosting today will be me, George Howson. Joining me today are sports journalist Dev Tyagi.
Hey.
F1 expert Alex Booth.
Hello.
And the president of the Fernando Alonso Fan Club, it's Sam Thatcher.
You shouldn't change that every race to like someone I really like and then someone I don't like.
There's a slight possibility that could happen, yeah. I'm not gonna lie.
All right, okay.
Oh, man. Right, so let's get into it. But for the most part, it was not the most exciting race. Mercedes were absolutely clear, and it was looking like another Mercedes 1-2, Hamilton ahead of Bottas. But Dev, in the final few laps, we got something that none of us saw coming, a puncture for Lewis Hamilton, but he managed to drag his car over the line just ahead of Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why he says still I rise. Although this time he might have, muttered the words with a beating heart, a fast beating heart. Incredible race, actually. It was almost like a sleepy giant was awoken in the final few laps. And I think before we head to the next Grand Prix, one of the main questions which would be up on every team's mind and the discussion agenda would be what tire compounds to actually go for. Because this was really kind of a revelation, wasn't it? Although some fans won't really be complaining because Verstappen amongst the top positions at the end of a Grand Prix is always good news. But definitely, I think the tyres made quite a show out of the Grand Prix. So it was fun in the end.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a repeat in some ways of 2013 when we had a lot of tyre failures in that race too. Like you say, Verstappen being up there as well is good. We've got 5 different constructors in the top 5. I think it's been a while since we've had that in a race. But yeah, so Hamilton winning the race just ahead of Max Verstappen. But aside from the puncture, Sam, he had it easy today. I mean, it's a record 7th win at Silverstone. Nobody's won more British Grand Prix than him. And obviously, after what's happened to Bottas, a non-score for him, this is a humongous step towards a 7th title.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much cakewalk up until that last few laps, wasn't it? I mean, Bottas was always kind of there. He was always about 2 seconds back, wasn't he? Wasn't really pushing him that hard. And if it wasn't for this last kind of crazy few laps that we saw, it would have been just another race of absolute domination from Lewis. The 3rd one in a row. This, I believe, gives him now a 30-point cushion in the championship, which is not unassailable, I'd say. He would need to have like a couple of really off races for it not to happen for him this year. But I think he's got it in the bag, really. Yeah, it's quite demoralising to say that after this is fourth races. We've got quite a few races confirmed now. It's quite demoralising to say that, but yeah, I think really this is probably over, really, isn't it? To be honest,
it could well be. I mean, I think the big thing is if he has a reliability failure, but 30 points is obviously more than the maximum anybody can score in a race, which is 26. So. And with how Hamilton is, I mean, he's won 3 in a row now, 3 pole positions in a row. It's looking very, very ominous for a 7th title. And Alex, I mean, the only slight mistake Hamilton made today was off the start. He had a bit of a dodgy start, but he held it into turn 1. And from then, it was relatively plain sailing until the final few laps for him.
Yeah, he didn't have the best getaway. It looked like Bottas would have had him in turn 1. I personally think Bottas probably could have been a bit more ambitious going into it. And Hamilton was able to allow a good lead. Close between the two for a lot of the race. They were exchanging fastest lap. And then nobody really saw that coming towards the end, the dramatic failures for the tyres on the Mercedes. I think Hamilton really needs to thank that, the good Lord was on his side, that it only happened on the last lap and not with one extra lap to do, otherwise he would have lost it. And yeah, as you mentioned, it's looking very, very healthy for him in the championship right now. I was saying earlier, I think the only thing that can really stop him is if he tests positive for COVID-19.
You know what? You might well be right with that. It's looking that way, isn't it? And, he got pole position yesterday. That's 91 pole positions overall, and he's 87 wins now as well. It's 4 off of Michael Schumacher's all-time record. Something that, after he said it, I don't think many people would have ever thought that was going to be broken. I never thought it would get broke, but it looks like it's going to go this year at this rate. But yeah, no, credit to Max Verstappen, though, Dev. I mean, he was the only guy who was keeping anywhere near the Mercedes. He was still a ways off, obviously, but he was the only guy who was trying to challenge them and essentially quite bored. During the race, he was having banter with his race engineer, telling his race engineer to have a drink. It's usually the other way around. But will he be ruining taking that pit stop in with a few laps to go? Could have won the race if not.
I think yes and no, because knowing Max, his first clear objective was for this weekend to finish inside top three, which he managed. But I think as the post-race discussion progresses, and he gets this feeling sinking in him that, he almost lost out on a possible race when he might dread that decision. But I think he was not really, the time where they pit him, he was not really aware that the kind of skirmish that Hamilton faced on his tires would have actually happened. And I think the clear agenda for Verstappen there was to simply pit for the faster rubber and put up the fastest lap in, which he eventually managed. I don't see him dreading the fact that the outcome eventually was a fighting second. But I think credit must go to Max throughout this weekend for managing his tires really well. This really allowed him, and ditto for Leclerc, to be in the stages where they actually ended up.
Yeah, absolutely. He had a great weekend. And again, he's the closest guy to the Mercedes on pure pace, looking like it's going to be quite consistently there in that regard. Maybe he could have won, but maybe he could have got a puncture as well. Who knows? But he did get the fastest lap. And he's only 6 points behind Bottas in the championship now. Let's not forget that. It's tight there behind Lewis Hamilton. There's a big gap, obviously, between him and everybody else. But yeah, so third place, Sam. And I said a while back, I didn't think Ferrari would get another podium this season. I'm already wrong on that one. It's a typical prediction from me. But Charles Leclerc, and again, another driver who's really outperforming his car.
Yeah, it's like the second time he's done that now in the first 4 races. He's really outperformed where that car actually should be. He's definitely a contender for like the driver of the day today. I mean, didn't really do much during the race. He kind of was just there between. There's nowhere near Verstappen in front of him, and pretty comfortably clear of Sainz behind him. So pretty quiet race. Managed his tyres relatively well. He kind of put himself there due to his qualifying yesterday, where he did a really good job Q3 yesterday to put that car where it was. Sort of Seb really just barely get into Q3. So I think Leclerc's result today probably owed to the fact he did such a good job during qualifying, did a great job, and yeah, he'll be happy with another podium because, like as you said, the Ferrari really is nowhere near that good, really, is it? It's a pretty terrible car. So yeah, another good weekend for Leclerc. Yeah, it's just a good job for him, really, showing great potential for the future.
Absolutely. I mean, the guys who were second and third today, both potential world champions in my eyes. I mean, it's going to be fascinating once Hamilton leaves the sport and the path is kind of open for those two to duke it out at the top. But yeah, so fourth place, and I believe matching his best ever finish for Renault, Daniel Ricciardo. Now, Alex, he was behind Norris for most of the race, but he must have made a move in the last lap or so. It was just that chaotic. A lot of it went under the radar. I'm guessing Norris was probably saving his tyres, though, because of what happened to his teammate.
It was what happened to Sainz that really enabled Ricciardo to get a tie result. But taking nothing away from Renault, they've had a strong weekend. They've had the fair share of reliability problems at the start of the season. And so to get both cars in the points is Ocon had a great battle with Stroll for most of the race. Yeah, I think Renault can really go away from this weekend with their head held high. They had a strong performance.
Yeah, a great result for Renault. 4th and 6th, their best result maybe since the return to F1. Somebody could correct me on that, but they never got a podium before since the return.
Not quite. Italy last year, they got 4th and 5th.
Nearly the best then. Best this season by some way, though. Really good. First double points finish this season as well for them. So things definitely looking up for them. Fair play to them. But yeah, still behind the McLarens in pure pace, but they took the chance when they got it. So yeah, definitely good for them. Our 5th place, Dev, Lando Norris in his home race. Amazing qualifying session by him. Not quite as fast during the race, but still a very solid result for him. And he's still 4th place in the championship.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. It's unfortunate that he was not able to, put on display his characteristic last lap lunges. There wasn't an opportunity on this occasion, but let's remember that he was the only McLaren running in points at the end of it. And I think P5 finishing just behind Gardo and kind of form Daniel was in today all weekend. I think credit must go to Lando. And he's a young lad, he's a daring lad. And I think obviously his best days are ahead of him. And who knows, his one of the best seasons ever could actually amplify in terms of the races that he has coming up. I expect him to put up a very strong weekend in the next race as well. Same track, home conditions, and there's always that extra motivation to lift your game. And he's in red hot form, so everything is going good for him.
Absolutely, yeah. Brilliant for Lando Norris. Good result for him again today. And it could well be another great result for him next week, like you say. It is at Silverstone again.
Great helmet as well this weekend.
Yeah, they're like a 5 or 6 year old design it.
Yeah, I believe her name's Eva. Won the competition to design his helmet for the British Grand Prix. So yeah, well done to her.
Did anybody notice the standings of the graphics on F1 after first practice?
Yeah, because they put the S below his name, didn't they? Like it, yeah.
I don't know. He changed his Twitter handle as well to correspond with that.
Did he?
Yeah.
Love him. What a legend.
I can't wait to see him and Ricciardo in the same team. It is going to be absolute jokes. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah,
the rest of the grid have already called them, both of them, as clowns.
The quick clowns, though. Very quick drivers.
Just be memes central, wasn't it, McLaren?
A quality weekend as well for Pierre Gasly, Sam. I mean, he was kind of down near the bottom of the points for most of this race, but a late surge because of people dropping down. He ended up 7th place.
Yeah, it's a very, very good weekend for him, considering his Hungary weekend was just an absolute nightmare, wasn't it? He couldn't really get anything going. Engine seemed to fail him just all the time. I don't even know how he got into Q3 in Hungary, to be honest. But yeah, it's a great great bounce back for him this weekend. I'm very happy for him because ever since he went back to Toro Rosso and now AlphaTauri, he just looks like a completely different driver to the one we saw struggling at Red Bull about the first half of last year. So I'm really happy for him that he's now kind of showing what he can do and just less pressure on him. He's not really expected to be doing anything other than kind of getting regular points, and that's what he's doing. And that's 7th today for him, like 7th in the first race of the year. He's even put a move on Sebastian Vettel as well through the Vale chicane, wasn't it? Looked a bit Gusteau and then into the Vale chicane. Looked a bit dodgy at first because thought he might have got off the track and got an advantage, but I think it was all cleared up. So yeah, that's very impressive from him to put a move on a Ferrari. I know we'll talk about Ferrari, but yeah, it's still an impressive move to take a full-time champion like that. So yeah, really good job from him. And yeah, his things are looking good for him at the moment.
Definitely, yeah, he's doing a fine job, and it does seem like he's doing a lot better at what was Toro Rosso, what is now AlphaTauri. A lot less pressure on him, like you say. A car that probably suits him better as well. I mean, yeah. Alex, we've got to talk about the other Alex Albon. You know, he ended up in 8th, but I think that's really flattered him. He had an absolutely torrid race today.
Yeah, he's having a very difficult time at the moment, isn't he? I fear for him in the sense that it's going the same way they did for Gasly last season. I've just got this impression that it seems that Verstappen seems to have this confidence-sapping ability of his teammates. And I think it's sad for Albon that he's going down the same direction. I mean, you know, that move on Magnussen at the start, that was a clumsy manoeuvre, to say the least. He rescued some points towards the end. He might have been a bit fortunate with what's going on in front of him, especially with Bottas. He desperately needs a decent result, and I think he knows that, and that's why. I mean, you saw in practice this weekend, he crashed. That's a sign that maybe the pressure's getting to him. Qualifying, he was out. He didn't make the Q3 session, and I think he really needs a decent result just to get his head together and to calm himself down and ease the pressure off of it, because the pressure is on at the moment. It definitely is. I mean, Christian Horner is forever is saying, you know, the seats are safe, but you can't imagine that Dr. Marco is as certain as that.
No, it's one of them things, isn't it? It reeks of Pierre Gasly 12 months ago. It's the exact same thing. He's finishing behind the sister team's cars. I mean, I think one of the most telling things for me, obviously there was the crash today with Magnussen. That was a bit desperate. He seemed under pressure to get as much positions as he can, as fast as he can. But if you looked at the qualifying laps between him and Verstappen yesterday, F1's YouTube channel put a side-by-side analysis. They were pretty much neck and neck. Albon was on the faster tyre, admittedly. They're pretty much neck and neck all the way until Cobbs. And then when they went into Beckett's Chapel, Verstappen streaked ahead, like half a second, probably more. He's got very little confidence in that car, and it's really showing. And once you lose confidence in the car and you've got Max Verstappen for a teammate, it's not looking good. It's not looking good.
One positive for him, though, is they have kind of shown a bit more confidence because they gave him a new race engineer, haven't they? I forget
Ricardo's last engineer.
Yeah, I forget his name.
Simon Rene.
Yeah, they've brought him from a factory role to the track, so that's kind of showing that they might have a bit more long-term faith in Albon. But yeah, he's definitely under pressure at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think he should be under pressure. He's a young kid at the end of the day. He's like 22, 23 or whatever. You know, the pressure showed for Kvyat when he was at the team, he got demoted. Pressure showed for Gasly at the team, he got demoted. Both of those drivers, I think, are doing quite well. Gasly obviously better than Kvyat. They are both good drivers. It's just the pressure. the same thing has happened with Vettel at Ferrari, I think. But with Red Bull, it always seems to happen for their second driver ever since Verstappen's gone on that team. You could argue the same thing happened for Ricciardo as well. He saw the writing was on the wall and got out of there while he could. Yeah, it's definitely worrying for him. And it shouldn't be. I think he's a really talented driver. I think he needs time. I'm not so sure he's going to get it. But then again, who's going to replace him? They're going to put Gasly back in the car? I didn't work last time. They're going to put Kvyat back in the car? I didn't work last time. Are they going to...
Hulkenberg full-time, please.
I want to see Hulkenberg in full-time as well. I'm so annoyed. We'll get on to him, obviously. I'm so annoyed what happened to him. I'm devastated for him. I can't believe... It could only ever happen to him. But yeah, let us know what you think. Let us know on Twitter, at F1 Chronicle, if you think that Albon will be able to see this season out, whether he should be under pressure, who could replace him, what's going to happen with him. And also comment on the live stream as well. We do go out live, so be sure to like our Facebook page, F1 Chronicle on Facebook. Yeah, so a weekend that a lot of people were tipping Racing Point to get at least a podium. I mean, they could well have done with the pace of the car, but all they ended up with in the end, Dev, is 2 points for Lance Stroll, and he was with the McLarens and the Renaults for most of the race, but towards the end, I'm guessing he had some sort of power issue or something. People were just streaking past him.
Yeah, I think perhaps it was also a battle on the mental side of things, which got him, because he wasn't expected to finish where he eventually did. You know, this was always a car which was primed to finish at the front of the grid amongst the top five. But I think McLaren were the real antithesis of Stroll this afternoon, as were the two Renaults. And I personally enjoyed the battle between Ocon and Stroll, and it was just one of those weekends where, they maybe didn't have the perfect car this weekend, because, it was surprising. The same driver who tops the timesheets on the free practice Friday ends up where he eventually did. He's surely going to, pull up his socks and come back a better fighter for the next race.
Yeah, a lot of pace in that Racing Point, but this is really not the weekend for them because of reliability. 10th place and the final point scorer, Sebastian Vettel. And you can't even say that he's unlucky. If anything, he was lucky to score a point. Just absolutely off the pace. Just a bit like Albon to an extent. He just couldn't match his teammate. Maybe didn't have enough confidence. He almost got overtaken by Bottas on the last lap as well. Yeah,
I mean, it's quite depressing to talk about Seb like this, really, because I really like him, to be honest. He looks like he's just kind of... He's done. Seems like he's lost his motivation. He's not connected to the car. He's had completely dismal this weekend this time, hasn't he? Because pre-practice one, he didn't really do any running, and he wasn't anywhere really for the rest of the weekend. And yet he was, as you say, very, very lucky to even score points this weekend. Because of Bottas's puncture, he obviously had to stop, so he gained free position from that. But I think if that hadn't happened, he would have been probably 11th for best. Because we saw Gasly do a move on him, and in probably a weaker car. Yeah, it's quite a depressing kind of time, Seb, at the moment. I don't really think. Yeah, I think he's just lost his kind of motivation to be in that car right now. I think he's just praying for the end of the season to get here. One thing I did see was quite interesting on TV. We saw before the race, it was him and Lawrence Stroll do a kind of bit of a fist bump. So that's quite.
Really?
See, yeah, I don't know if anyone else saw that. Like him, it was on screen. Like him and Lawrence Stroll, like in the hit before the race. They did like a little fist bump. So whether that's anything concrete, I'll let you see. But I think he's kind of maybe fell out of love with the sport a little bit as well, to be honest. But yeah, he's in form at the moment.
So, I don't know. I mean, I think he's got one or two options. He's basically either have a year out or go to Aston Martin, which is obviously now Racing Point. I'd like to see him at Aston Martin, but at the same time, I wouldn't like to see Perez out of the sport. But it could reinvigorate his career. He needs a change, obviously. He's going to get that because Ferrari are giving him the axe. But
yeah, I mean, how old is he? 33? 32?
33. Yeah, 33.
Yeah, so we've seen, Alonso's coming back, and he's going to be 39 soon.
Yeah.
So he's still a world-class driver, I'd say. I wouldn't say he's not world-class anymore. So yeah, maybe, as you say, a year out, be doing the world a good, possibly, just to recharge his batteries, see his family a bit more, because we know he's quite a family-orientated man, isn't he? But yeah, he's in a bad position at the moment. And I believe he's 13th or something in the championship. Pretty crazy.
Yes, he's behind Gasly and Ocon. 13th.
It's 2020 things.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good for him. Not good reading for him, not good reading for Ferrari. Moving on, Alex, we mentioned it a few times, Valtteri Bottas, he probably could have been a bit more aggressive off the start, but in the end, that wasn't the decisive thing for him. He had the puncture with a few laps to go, and that dropped him from second all the way down to 11th. Heartbreaking for him, and a lot of parallels between this year and last year. He was neck and neck with Hamilton. I don't know, which year was it when he had the puncture at Baku? Was that 2018 or 2018? 2018. Never mind. But yeah, it's heartbreaking for him either way. He was relatively right with Hamilton, but that's a 25-point loss this weekend. It's shocking for him, really, and a massive dent in his title hopes, but no fault of his own.
No, it's no fault of his own, and shame that he's lost that ground to Hamilton. But I think it was going to be. I think I've said this before on a previous podcast. Bottas, he did it last year. He won the first race, and it looked like it's the new Valtteri Bottas. But Lewis Hamilton's old and grey enough to realise that what he's doing, and he can deal with that no problem. You've just seen this weekend. I mean, the performance that he's put in. I know there was the puncture that came in at the end of it, but Lewis has the measure of Valtteri on I'd say 90% of the time. Valtteri has his occasional day where he can beat him, and it's great to see. But that's the pecking order of Mercedes at the moment. But nevertheless, it was a strong performance from Valtteri today. He was keeping Hamilton honest until the tyres faded out and subsequently failed. But yeah, I just think that Valtteri is believing that. Well, I hope for his sake he is believing that he can beat it. But he's a very ambitious man if he is, because it's Hamilton's title.
Yeah, it is at the moment. It absolutely is. Bottas is a great driver. We've seen it at Williams. We've seen it at Mercedes. Make no mistake about it. But Hamilton's a great champion, one of the best ever, if not the best ever. And it looks so bad on him. But you put pretty much any of the other drivers in that second Mercedes, they'll be getting similar, if not worse, results to Bottas. There are a few exceptions, of course, but for the most part, that's the case. So yeah, really bad weekend for him. It's going to be soul crushing for him. He needs to win the next race, but if Hamilton finishes second, it's not even that big of a game for him. So, yeah.
One thing I said yesterday, I think one of the best ways to describe it is Bottas might win the occasional battle, but Hamilton will win the war.
Yeah, that's spot on. That's what it's like. It's the consistency of Hamilton. It's just on another level. Pretty much. I mean, this year is probably going to be different because there's less races. It might not be. He usually wins at least 10 races every year. That's so hard to match. There's not many out there throughout history who can do that. But yeah, so moving on. 12th place in the end for George Russell, Dev, and did a great job in qualifying, going to Q2 again, not back because of the penalty for the blocking. Ended up 12th in the end. It's a great result for him, but the pace in that Williams car is not particularly encouraging. He was down at the back with Latifi for most of that Grand Prix.
Especially in the latter half of the race, he was consistently wavering from 13th to 17th. But I think the real positive, if one were to use that phrase for Russell, was that he has established clearly the fact that 2020 is not the year where Williams are the backmarkers. It is Alfa Romeo. And he was actually good. He was pacey on the straight. And he made an excellent move ahead of Raikkonen. He was shunting him around the outside on the Wellington straight, and then that was that. But then still, he would want a car with a better overall package, especially in challenging tracks like Silverstone. Might be his home Grand Prix, but yeah, I mean, he can certainly do much better with a better car. Although P12 doesn't really suck that much, especially when you realize that you have drivers like Sainz, Giovinazzi, Raikkonen behind you. But then that's all that he could do today.
Yeah, he did the maximum he could, and again, no points from him, unfortunately. He will get them eventually. It's going to happen, but it's just such a long road for him, bless it. But yeah, you mentioned there, Dev, Carlos Sainz. Now, Sam, again, this was another guy who was in the points, but dropped down right at the end because of a puncture. Really got a feel for him. Really unlucky for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's so unlucky, isn't it? Like, he did a great job throughout the race. Started 7th. At the end of the first lap, was ahead of both Ricciardo and his teammate. Did some great moves to get past over those on the first lap, going into left field and that. Really good moves for him. But it's, very unlucky. Very unlucky at the end there to get the puncture, no fault of his own. Just another victim of the really high deg tyres that we saw this weekend on quite a hot track. So yeah, unlucky for him. And yeah, he's had quite a bit of he's had quite a quiet season this year, hasn't he, compared to last year? Because last year was the best of the rest quite a mile, wasn't he? Easily 7th. This year's not been as good for him, and Norris is ahead. To be honest, he's been quite unlucky throughout quite a few of the races. I'm not too sure where he is in the championship. Probably quite unlucky, to be honest, because he had a really good race. And to be honest, I don't want to say Ferrari are going to be terrible again next year, because we don't know that. But I don't know. Do you think he might be regretting his move to Ferrari? I'm not too sure.
He already is.
It probably is, yeah. He said he's not, but
yeah,
he seems to be following in his hero's footsteps and doing the wrong move at the wrong time.
Yeah, what was it? Ferrari's CEO came out the other day and said, we're not going to be in a position to win any races until
2022.
2022, yeah.
It's not what you want to hear, is it?
So, I mean, I don't know. It might be a good thing for him next year just to embed himself on the team at Ferrari, because as we all know, Ferrari is quite a special team to drive for. It's a different team to drive for than any others, isn't it? If you've got so many fans around the world, so maybe it's a good thing he's not under pressure straight away next year. But I quite agree with you guys that he might be saying that with that meme where you got that smile on your face, secretly dying inside.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's possible to drive for Ferrari without pressure, but I do know what you're saying, Sam. Sorry, Alex, what were you going to say?
I was going to say one thing that is on scientists' side is that history tells us that whenever Ferrari have a really poor season, they tend to do a lot better the season after. I mean, most recently they had a barren season in 2016, and then in 2017 Vettel was challenging for the title. Before that, they had a poor season in 2014 when Alonso left and Vettel joined, and they were suddenly battling with Mercedes. They won the first race, and they did. They had a bad season in 2009, very poor season. When Alonso joined the year after, they were fighting for championship again. Poor season in 05, then Schumacher challenges the title in 06. So, unless Ferrari probably can do that turnaround, but I suppose with the rules coming in for 2022, as John Elkann mentioned earlier this week, that's what their focus is looking on. But it's hard to say if Sainz is regretting that move, but I think it depends what he's looking at long term. But like I say, if there's historical aspects to taking into consideration, then that's on his side.
McLaren again, Mercedes engines next year as well. Yeah, if they keep their improvements going with the rest of the car, they could be maybe not at the front, but challenging for regular podiums, wins. I'm not too sure, but
I think with McLaren and Mercedes engines, they're never going to beat Mercedes, are they?
No.
They could be up there in a clear third, though, in the constructors. They could be challenging Red Bull around some tracks as well. You never know.
Yeah. But yeah, the Sainz this weekend, very unlucky to not finish in the points.
Absolutely, yeah. Very unlucky for him. Very poor season for Alfa Romeo. I'm not going to touch on him too much because it was just that uneventful for the race for them. Giovinazzi 14th, Kimi Räikkönen 17th. But Dev, I don't know if you saw the radio, but it was just a disaster for Kimi Räikkönen. I mean, he came into the pits to change his tyres and his engineer was telling him, no, stay out. I won't repeat exactly what he said, but he wasn't best pleased.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a great sight, is it? To see a former world champion and somebody who finished third here at Silverstone in the red car in 2018,
finishing the points
be
last
so
year
far
as well.
out. Yeah. And it's really pathetic what's happening to Kimi. But then again, it's basically the case of your former team's engine screwing you up this year. I mean, there's no other way I would put it. That car really is, as I said earlier in this chat, that they are essentially the back markers. Although I can't really seem to understand Kimi's struggles because the guy with the same car ahead is doing not such a horrible job. Like today he finished 14th. What might have happened if Giovinazzi, and sorry, I'm shifting a bit from Kimi, but then there's not much to say there. What might have happened if he wouldn't have been awarded the 5-second penalty? He was hanging in there on 11th, 12th, and he was poised to finish probably 11th. I don't know, or maybe, hold on to his 12th. But then Räikkönen as a back marker, it's something he didn't want to see at this stage in his career. So as he says, I was having a shit, and that's what he's having. So.
Every episode you're going to get that in depth. I just know it. But yeah, I got a feel for Kimi Räikkönen. He was a very lucky man, though. I don't know if everybody saw it, but he did have a front wing failure. Half his front wing came off going into Beckett's Chapel.
It's essentially now 2 races out of 4 where he's had a problem with the car part really flowing off, going in another direction. Probably it's a spiritual sign of him to part with the game. Because when you don't really have the entire car in one place, then I don't know what else to say.
It's not good, is it? It does kind of reek of them trying to trim as much weight off that car as possible, and it's just failing because of that they just can't handle the pressures. There you go. Yeah, very bad for Alfa Romeo, and hard to see him a way out of them for the moment because the big problem is the engine, and obviously they don't have control over that. Nicholas Latifi, he finished the race. He was 15th. Not too bad of a job for him overall. And the last finish that we've not talked about so far, Sam, is Romain Grosjean. Haas again with a bit of an alternate strategy. And to be fair, I complimented him last time in Hungary. I thought he did a fine job trying to hold the traffic for Magnussen, helped him get a point. But today, Summer's defending. It was like the old Grosjean, the 2013 Grosjean.
I don't understand how this guy is still racing in this sport. He's just, some of the moves that he does are just absolutely ridiculous, like so dangerous. And we saw Ricciardo go with the radio and say, "Oh, well, I'm not going to do an Australian accent," but that was a bit fishy. That was a bit fishy, weren't it, lads? Grosjean today, yeah, fair play to Haas. They've another roll of the dice. I mean, their car's very similar to Alfa, isn't it? In the fact their Ferrari engine's not really doing anything for them. So fair play to them for trying that strategy. But yeah, no, Grosjean's defending today was pretty ridiculous. I'm surprised he didn't get some sort of penalty for it. He got a black and white flag, didn't he? And still complained over the radio about it, which is something he always does, isn't it? He always loves to complain, isn't he? Grosjean, this has got to be his last year in F1, surely.
I think you're right. I think it probably is. Especially with Schumacher and Schwartzman coming up in the Ferrari Academy. It was bad. I mean, he must be getting defensive tips off of Kevin Magnussen because that was awful. Like the one on Ricciardo, that easily could have been an airplane crash. How he didn't get a time penalty for that, I'll never know. It's ridiculous.
He almost Sainz, he almost squeezed him off at Stowe as well, moving under braking. I mean, you just can't do that, can you?
No. That's the Verstappen rule broken, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah.
It's very...
Someone of his experience should know better than that.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
If I could just add in there, he used to be a much better driver during the Lotus years. People never really had that many complaints about him. And he has managed, I think, 10 podiums or something in his career. Majority of which came during the 2012-2013 seasons. And that is the time he actually admitted that Raikkonen taught me a lot about. I used to sit down with him and he used to come up with his limericks and one-liners. But he used to tell me how to defend, how not to attack. And, I learned a lot from him. And he was a far more sorted driver. I mean, that's just my observation vis-a-vis where he is today.
You're right, yeah, you're right, Dev. And you know what I think it is? Ever since him and Kimi Raikkonen parted ways, obviously Grosjean stayed at Lotus. He's not had that authoritative figurehead, not that person to learn from. Pastor Maldonado replaced Raikkonen. That's not a good teammate to follow in the footsteps of. It looks like he's learned off him, to be honest with you, how he's going at the moment. And then after that, it was Gutierrez, again, just in for one season. And now it's Kevin Magnussen. Now Grosjean's a more experienced guy, and it's just not working for him. He needs someone calming, someone to tell him what to do. He doesn't have that. Despite Gunter Steiner's best efforts, I'm sure he tells him what to do, but he's obviously not listening.
It was so cute that Ricciardo at the end of it made of that possible collision as it was a sketchy move. That was so cute. When they could have used any kind of expletives, but...
How he didn't swear at that, I don't know. I'd be furious if I was Ricciardo with that. That could have been an awful incident.
Yeah, he just seemed to react like so late to these moves. Like it's almost as if he was just wasn't looking in his mirrors early enough, and just looked at the last second and said, "Oh, Ricciardo's there now. I've got to move over to the left or something over to the right." Just seemed to react really late to everything. But
pretty much, yeah.
Terrible day.
Yeah, not a good day for him. 16th overall, and the end didn't even work. But his pace was decent on the meetings. I was shocked, to be honest with you, how quick he was, how much he held people up, but eventually it all fell away and he ended up near the back. To be honest with you, he kind of deserved that after the moves he was doing, to be frank. I mean, you can't go doing that.
He never pitted. That's why he was hanging out there in the upper end of the midfield. That's largely because he didn't pit. Otherwise, he would have been relegated further down.
Yeah, definitely. But he did keep the McLarens behind for a while, and the Renaults as well. So fair play on that front. Yes. But yeah, defending not so good. Not so good in that regard. Now, three non-finishes. Well, two non-finishes, one non-starter in this race. Daniel Kvyat, he had what could have been a horrible incident at Maggotts Beckett's Chapel. Had a puncture. He blamed himself and attacked the cameraman after, but it wasn't his fault. I think he had a puncture going into that. Kevin Magnussen, he had a crash of Albon. He ended up out of the race. Albon got the penalty. We've already covered that. And the last guy, Nico Hülkenberg, came back to Formula One for this race, obviously because of Sergio Perez getting coronavirus. We wish Perez all the best, obviously. But this could have been a massive opportunity for Hülkenberg, potentially a podium. But Alex, he didn't even get off the start line. His car failed to start. Unluckiest guy in Formula One. It's awful.
It seemed the writing was on the wall, wasn't it? And, there was a lot of people speculating as to whether he finally could achieve a podium, but it just seemed that, it was still a bit low. But I reckon he'll get a chance next week. I can't imagine Perez is going to be back next week. It's
10-day quarantine, so I don't think he can be.
Yeah, I can't see Racing Point getting someone else either. So, he could have another chance next week, but you've got to feel sorry for the guy. After losing his drive with Renault and not getting another drive, and then an opportunity like this comes, he did okay in qualifying, considering he's had no testing. He only had a steep fitting done very, very quickly before first practice. And for a mechanical failure like that before the race, which means he couldn't take part, it's rotten luck for him. But if the luck reverses, maybe he can get a good result next weekend if he stays in the team, which I'm 99.9% sure he will do.
I think he will do too. With the greatest respect to Gutierrez and Van Dorn, who are the other test drivers for Racing Point, Hülkenberg is at least as good as those two. Gutierrez can't even take part anyway. I don't think he's not done enough miles for his Super's license to stay active.
They're more race rusty anyway, because at least Hülkenberg raced last year. I mean, Van Dorn didn't race in last year at all. Gutierrez hasn't raced in 2016.
Yeah, Van Dorn's got Formula E to do anyway next week.
You'd think that F1 would take the priority, but yeah, you are right. Hulkenberg's got more recent experience, and he's experienced driving for that team too. Van Dorn and Gutierrez never have, so unless it's been a test. But yeah, that is a lot. That's all 20 drivers we've gone through now. We mentioned it a little bit, but our drivers of the day, I'm going to stay with what I said originally. I'm going to go for Charles Leclerc, getting a podium again in that Ferrari. A hell of an achievement, miles ahead of his teammate. Dev, who's your best man today?
The Honey Badger, Daniel Ricciardo, P4. Really did well. Let's face it, he wasn't really expected to be in the top 4. He could have maybe finished 5, 6. The McLaren pace, especially on the straights, was really fantastic. They were flying out there. And if there's been a quiet hero of the 2020 season, for me personally, it's been that man from Perth. Good job by him.
And the best of all points for Renault as well. Sam, who's your best driver today?
It's between Leclerc and Gasly for me. I'm probably going to go with Pierre, actually. I think he did a really good job across this whole weekend. Really good bounce back from pretty dismal Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. And we saw him do a few good moves on Sebastian, but really nice moves throughout the field. So yeah, that's Pierre Gasly for me.
Alex?
I'm going to agree with you, George. I'm going with Leclerc for my drive today. I mean, all over the weekend as well. I mean, he did really well in qualifying, and he had a fantastic race as well. That underlines his outstanding talent, and he's moved on from that catastrophe in Austria in race 2, and it shows that the potential that he has in a car that is quite clearly not capable of challenging for the top 3. I know he was a bit lucky with the tyre problems that Mercedes had, but he was still in a strong 4th beforehand. Yeah, I mean, he wiped the floor with Sebastian Vettel again, sadly for him, but great performance today by Charlotte.
Yeah, brilliant. The great drivers always outperform the cars, and he's definitely done that today in his Ferrari. But yeah, that's about our lot. We also have an official store for merchandise. Just go to the F1 Chronicles website to get custom mugs, t-shirts and more. We broadcast on Facebook, as we've said, so please do like our Facebook page for that, F1 Chronicle on Facebook. We're available on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Omni Studio, Pocket Cast. Just search for the F1 Grid Talk on all of those. We've got a back catalogue of over 40 episodes now, not just race previews and reviews, also more documentary style ones like our interview with Mario Solo, the head of Pirelli at Tiregate and Ayrton Senna. Search for our subreddit as well, F1 Grid Talk, and also search for the F1 Grid Talk on Patreon if you want to donate to us getting better mics, lights and equipment. But yeah, we'll be back on Wednesday to preview the 70th anniversary Grand Prix, another race at Silverstone. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.
Bye.
See you in a bit.